Hey everybody. So in this video we're going to talk about something called menu mix. So menu mix is very important when we are trying to determine how much of what products we should prep on our menu or how much we expect to sell. How many hamburgers are we going to sell compared to how many spaghetti and meatballs we're going to sell, right? So this goes into the next video that we're going to be talking about how much production do we make. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what part of our menu do we expect to sell more of, or do we expect to sell less of, right? So menu mix equals a percentage of sales that come from each menu item. And generally, we're going to divide this into menu categories and is relatively consistent for a meal period across the same days of week. So if you have 100 people come in on Monday, 10% of them are going to order steak. That's not going to change too much throughout all the days of the week unless you have like Steak Tuesdays or a special promotion to promote that particular menu item, okay? So, like I said here, so it may change seasonally with warm weather and definitely with a menu change. Or if you have a promotional item like a steak day or pasta Tuesdays or some sort of thing like that, which could skew that percentage for that one day. Now, our menu mix formula that we use to figure this out is really simple. It's the number of items that we sold divided by the total number of items sold. So we get these numbers from our POS system or our sales receipts, and we figure out, generally we break this down into menu category. So we don't include our appetizers, our main courses, and desserts. We would do separate calculations for each of those, right? So for instance, I've got an example here coming up. I can get it to come up. Okay, so restaurant typically sells 140 desserts each Monday. Of those, 37 are usually sorbet. So what percentage of the desserts are sorbet? Well, it's a simple 37 out of 140 gives us a percentage of 26.4%. Now, if the number of desserts that we sell we think is going to change, say to 200, then we can apply this 26.4% to that 200 and figure out how many sorbets we think we're going to sell, right? Okay, ketchup to me. All right, so menu mix is usually calculated against total in the menu category. Like I said, you're going to do this on desserts, you're going to do this on main courses, you're going to do this on appetizers. But we all know that not every customer that comes in is going to have one of all three of those, right? They may not have an appetizer. They may just have main courses, or they may have just come in for dessert and coffee, right? So we need to be able to calculate of the people coming in, how many are going to have that category, and then how many people are going to order that specific dessert or item out of that category, right? So like the PowerPoint just came up. The manager must calculate the percentage of guests who purchase food from each menu category first, right? So if we think 200 people are coming in, how many of those 200 people do we think are going to have appetizers? And then once we know that, okay, half of them are going to have appetizers. So now we have 100 people. Out of those 100 people, how many are having the bruschetta? How many are having the escargot, right? So same calculation, except we're starting with the bigger category, right? So the number of guests buying that category divided by the total number of guests. So in our next example, we've got 330 guests coming into the restaurant, but only 140 of them buy dessert. So we've forecasted using all our quantitative and qualitative data before that we're going to have 330 guests coming into the restaurant tonight, but only 140 of them buy dessert. What percentage bought dessert? Well, it's 140 out of 330, which is going to give us a percentage of 42.4%. And again, this is going to be historical, right? We've already had this night. We know that 140 people came in and bought dessert out of the 330. So if we think 400 are going to come in tomorrow, we can apply that 42.4% to the 400 tomorrow and figure out how many desserts they're going to have. So, what are our steps in forecasting the number of menu items sold? Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out how many guests are coming in. We're going to use that qualitative and quantitative data first, so the historical data, and apply rolling averages and trends to that. And then we're going to use our qualitative data and see, okay, what's the weather like? Do we have something special happening in the neighborhood? Is there something that's going to impede us? Do we have a new restaurant open next door, right? So we're going to get that guest forecasted number of how many guests we expect to come in for the night. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out, of those guests coming in, how much are going to buy, how many of those are going to buy an appetizer or a main course or dessert, right? And then once we know that, we're going to know, okay, we've got 100 people that are going to buy dessert, right? The next step is to apply our percentage to those number of people that we think are going to have a dessert. So menu mix item, which is going to give us the number of that item that we need to prepare or that we think we're going to sell. In the case of our example before, it was the sorbets, right? We figured that 330 people were coming in, only 140 people were going to have dessert, and then it was 26% or something like that, we're going to have dessert, the sorbet, right? So, final example. Historically, 42% of guests order dessert Thursday night. Of those, 37% are sorbet. How many sorbets should the pastry chef plan next Thursday if the guest forecast is 370 guests? So we have 370 guests coming in. Now, the first thing we need to do is figure out, of that 370, how many are even going to order dessert, right? So it's 42%. So we're going to multiply that times our 0.42 to get us 155.4 desserts. Right? Or, sorry, 155.4 people that are going to buy dessert. Now, I know we don't have 0.4 of a person, but we're not going to round yet, right? We're going to apply our 37% of those people are going to have sorbet. So 155.4 people that are having dessert, of those, 37% are going to have sorbet. So we can multiply that out and we get 57.5. Now I'm going to round that to 58 sorbets. Okay, I'm going to always over prep a little bit more. Now the chef may want to add a little bit extra as a buffer, but we're going to talk about that in the next video. So very important to understand, by looking at our historical data of what we've sold and how many people came in, we can gauge how much we think people are going to order going forward based on the percentages of what we've sold in the past.